I'd say it was the most civilized way of being thrown out of a club altogether.
Pretty good at beatboxing.
Want to feel sexy.
Check this out though, right? So what?
It sounds a little bit airy-fairy.
As long as you haven't been cutting out my bits.
Shorts.
What's happened to this podcast? Yo, what's going on guys? Rhys here from morethanlifting.com with my good friend and fellow co-host Chris Thatcher. I called you a co-host this time instead of a cohort. Do you want to say hi, mate?
Yeah, happy to be a co-host rather than a cohort. Yeah, hi guys, how you doing?
Cool. We're talking about bodyweight training, gymnastics, strength, skills, calisthenics, sometimes a bit of weight things because Chris likes throwing stuff around, and that's okay. Today we're talking about mindset and aligning your training with the purpose, the reason that you're training for. It's no good just going into the gym or going down the bars or the park and just throwing your weight around aimlessly. You need to have a plan to be able to hit your goals. We've covered the basic four kind of elements of training. We've got movement fundamentals and preparation. We've got low-level drills. We've done endurance and skills training. And now it's time to mix them all together and spit something out at the end. So that's what the mindset and the purpose of your training is all about, and that's what we're going to get into today.
Sounds good to me. Cool.
Right, Chris, well, I need a breather now, so you can start off.
Okay, thanks for that. No, cool. So, yeah, we've talked in previous episodes about, having a kind of rhyme and a reason to the actual training that you're doing from a technical perspective, i.e. selecting the right exercises for the goal that you actually have. But when we talk about mindset and aligning I kind of guess also to some extent your values and your sort of beliefs around, what good health is, what good physical training should actually look like, then I think that's where we get into mindset to a slightly deeper level, because it's a great place to start. So whether you're talking about, and I'll kind of broaden this out to a sort of fuller life perspective, if you're talking about your life in general, if you're talking about your business or your work, if you're talking, obviously now as we are, about fitness training, nutrition, always trying to have a point to anchor things back to, a kind of real emotional driver behind everything that you're doing, gives it so much more strength, gives it so much more reason and meaning in your life. And I think as human beings, one of the things we're always looking for, certainly in the modern era, is to find meaning in things, and I think when it comes to your training, that should be no different. There should be a real sense of, as we've said, a real sense of purpose and a desire to do this for not just the physical gain in terms of getting a fit, lean, healthy, functionally sound body, but doing something that you actually enjoy, that you think is going to serve you in your life, that makes you fit for whatever purpose that you actually have, whether it's being a parent, a partner, just a professional in any context, making sure that there is that greater reasoning behind what you're doing, and always being able to go back to that, because as with most things with your fitness training, as I'm sure you have probably experienced yourself in the past, I know I certainly have, and I know Rhys has as well, there will be times when you actually just can't be asked. Like you don't feel very driven about going to the gym, you're not really feeling overly inspired to go and do any sort of workout, and obviously that's okay in some respects, because we know we're going to have those down times, and also we know we're going to have sickness as well. And I think it's always great when you look at a year, for example, with a very macro view of, I know that I'm probably going to be sick or be incapacitated for one reason or another, whether it's through injury, through holidays, just through sheer pressures of work and life in general, for a certain number of weeks out of the year, and trying to make sure that then on the good weeks, when you're feeling great and you're feeling pumped, you obviously make sure you optimize those as much as possible. So I've lost my train of thought now, great. So making sure that when you do hit those points of struggle, you can actually reference yourself back to something. You can find a greater depth of reason in what you're actually doing. So, for example, let's say, your health is important to you because you just want to be around as long as you possibly can to see your kids grow up, to see your grandkids, maybe even, that might be something that's of real worth to you. Then you've just got to, in those moments when you think, I don't really feel like working out this week, first and foremost, know if you don't hit the gym in that first session, if you hit Monday and you're like, I might just do it tomorrow. If you're not injured, you're not sick, and you're not particularly tired, or you're not got any other constraint on your time, just remind yourself of that greater reason behind what you're actually doing it for. And that should immediately inspire you on a very deep emotional level. And remember, decisions are driven very emotionally. They're coming from a very behaviorally based and very deep emotional place, then make sure that, just...
Sorry, was that? Just that proper little rhyme in there. That was nice.
Was it really?
Yeah. Carry on.
You've completely thrown me again.
I'm sorry. I know I did. I couldn't help myself.
So just having the capacity to bring yourself back to whatever that real reason is, I think is going to inspire you a lot more than you can actually realise. It sounds a bit woo-woo. It sounds a little bit airy-fairy that, what does that really mean? If I don't feel like going to the gym, I just don't go to the gym. It's like, well, it is important. It's important to maintain the consistency and the momentum that you're getting from your training. It's important, obviously, for the greater reasons that you want to be fit and well. Now, as you're younger, it may just be that you want to get laid and you want to meet, good-looking other people who are willing to sleep with you, or just be, confident to be out and about with other people who are looking good and just feeling capable in yourself in terms of your strength, your functional capacity, and just, enjoying your body, really kind of loving it and not having sort of horrible periods of self-loathing, which obviously people can go through. So as you get older, obviously those kind of reasons can slightly change. People still want to look good, they want to feel good, but there's normally, a different reason behind what they're doing. They want to be a better performer at work. They want to be able to just have more energy to play with their kids. They want to feel sexy and, attractive to their spouses, So always having that emotional reasoning behind something gives it so much more strength and will stop you kind of getting stuck and, hindered in your progress in any level of training. The other side to it is making sure that the training that you're selecting is going to essentially align with all those things as well. So, for example, if your goal is really just to be fit and functionally well, the actual demand on your time isn't going to be so great. I mean, you can achieve that with, relatively short bursts, maybe more frequently throughout the week. So like 20, 25 minutes of training a day, every day, because, the less time you're actually training, the greater the frequency demand should be to kind of maintain the momentum and the consistency in the results. Then beyond that, if you actually want to train less frequently, you're going to have to look at the duration and maybe train, an hour to an hour and a half max, 3-4 times a week, depending again what the training is you're doing. And I'm aware that I am rambling a little bit now, so I'll pass back to Rhys in a second. But my reasoning is that understand exactly what it is you want to be getting from the training, and then ultimately understand how that's going to be reflected in your sort of time demands, your other commitments that you may have, and obviously make sure it's something that you're going to enjoy doing as well. And then once that's actually aligned, once you have your kind of sense of values and your reasoning and your real meaning behind the work, and then on top of that, you're doing something you actually really enjoy doing. It's a physical pursuit that you're going to get a lot of pleasure out of. And, anyone can say just go to the gym, but if you really hate gyms, as, Mr. Morgan here does, then, you're not going to get a lot out of it. Whereas if gymnastics is the thing that you think is really going to inspire you, great. But understand that there is going to be a greater time commitment to progress, extensively on those things and to really get the greater benefits beyond a certain point when you've obviously got that initial introduction to the discipline where you can see some great results very quickly. Beyond that initial first few weeks, then you're going to have to work a little bit harder to see any more sort of gains at the same pace as you did before. I'm going to hand back to you now. Does that all make sense?
Oh, yeah, you've just about covered it all. Right, that's it for this week, guys. If you want to check back next week, we're going to be talking about nutrition. And don't forget to like and subscribe. I don't even know what to say, so I couldn't even wrap it up for you, man. But no, that was amazing, man. You've been through just about everything. Yeah.
Just about everything.
Without a hitch. You even name dropped your own podcasting. It's like an interview show. Solo show. Yeah.
Sorry, I had to... Oh God, I just feel like we're going to have so many edits in this episode. We've done so well up until now, and we've got through.
No, we didn't. We didn't ramble at the start. We just got straight into it. You took it off, and you went. It's like 10 minutes, and we've done everything. So let's just talk about something else for a bit.
Yeah. So So as of recording today, it was the U.S. presidential election, and Donald Trump is now the U.S. president.
Oh, fuck! Did he win?
Do you not know? Have you only just woken up?
No, I've massively avoided it completely.
No, we as of January, I believe the 21st, we will have President Trump.
Oh my God! Well, that's good news, man. I can't believe you just dropped this on me while we're recording.
I was meant to talk to you, but I was going to mention it to you before the call, actually, because
we were talking about everything else.
Yeah, I know. Like, just apart from like the biggest, historical event of the day, we're just like chatting about audio levels and headsets and stuff. But yeah, I know it's a reality. I woke up this morning and put the news on, and yeah, like it was just like some of the news networks I watch are kind of more independent. I watch stuff on YouTube, and looking at these people's faces, like just the shock of it. Like, I thought Brexit was bad, but watching people just like, I actually can't believe this is happening. It's like something out of a bad film.
Well, no political opinions on a podcast because it's a fitness podcast.
No, I'm going to have a political opinion on this one. This is an absolute disaster for the entire
totally
planet.
Agree with you. This is fucking terrible. Oh my God. Well, yeah, okay, right. So, brief intermission. Let's get back into it. That's the news of the day from Coach Thatch.
Our political correspondent.
From coming to us live from just south, aren't you? Are you south? Oh no, you're in.
No, I'm further north.
I thought you were. Right, of course.
I'm in Cambridgeshire, baby.
Cambridge. I thought you were there. Well, fuck that up as well. So. You're right, though. Everything you said was bang on, mate. You've got to make sure you're turning up. You've got to make sure you're putting in the work when you can. You've got to be able to. You've got to understand that you will be ill at some point. You will be. You will have distractions because this isn't your entire life. This is something you're doing. It's not going to be your top priority. You've probably got a family, or you've got you've got your own shit. Everyone's got their own shit. So fitness doesn't always come first, but when it does factor in, because it is important to look after your health, then it's important that you do it and you're doing it right. You're doing it to achieve what needs to be achieved, or your goals and your aims are, and not just throwing stuff around willy-nilly, because you're not going to get the results you want, and you could end up hurting yourself. You can end up doing yourself more damage or more harm than good, and you could just drop it all completely. So we don't want any of those things. They're all bad things to happen, because they mean that you don't carry on with your fitness. So what I tend to do when I'm training is do cycles, because I know that I don't want to train all the time. I want to do like blitz. I want to blitz when I've got a goal. I want to put the work in right now. I want to do as much as I can, very short spaces of time, like 4-week cycles where I'll train every day. And that's basically what I do. And then after my 4-week cycle, I tend to just have a break. I'll deload, which is an important term in fitness that often gets thrown by the wayside, because when people are training, they don't want to stop. They want to just keep going and keep going and keep going. But you've got to factor in that recovery time as well. And not just for your body, but also for your mind, because you need to, and for your life, because you need to be able to do other stuff as well. If you're going down the gym or going to the bars every day training, then you're not always going to be doing other just as important stuff that might matter a lot as well, like social life. I'm not saying you should go out on the lash every weekend, but maybe on your deloading week, you could probably go out once and have a beer or a glass of red. I prefer red, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I do too. I mean, there's a great line by a guy who I sort of follow quite extensively, a guy called Dr. John Berardi, who runs a company called Precision Nutrition, who are now becoming the kind of, I guess, the gold standard in nutrition coaching practices. And they will be someone that I talk about a bit more in a future episode when we get into nutrition more specifically. But he has this term, which he kind of brings up quite a lot, is trying to focus on fitness in the context of a real human life. And I love that way of breaking it down so simplistically, because it's very easy to kind of look at elite level athletes. It's very easy to look at the guys all over Instagram and Facebook and Twitter to some extent, but looking, and certainly YouTube definitely, looking at these guys who have literally made it their life. Like for you and I mean, we are actually coaches. We are people that push ourselves very hard physically. It's part of our job. It's part of who we are. And that's cool. That's definitely for us. But I don't have to then go and clock up 10 hours in an office somewhere. I'm literally in the gym all the time. Generally, if I'm working, I'll be either in the gym or I'll be, out and about having meetings and things like that. But my entire lifestyle has been built around the fact that I am a fitness coach, and therefore, a large part, I almost consider a part of my work is to train, is to test my limits, is to test out training protocols and cycles like you were talking about, and really drill down onto how best to optimize, physical performance from my perspective, that I can obviously then learn how to translate that into helping others to optimize as well. But for a lot of people out there training, a lot of people listening to this, I'd love to think that we could get some, elite level guys listening in and hopefully getting some value from it. But the reality is most people are going to be kind of weekend warriors, people that, really love training. It's part of their life, but it doesn't define their life. It's not fundamentally the largest part of who they actually are. And for most of us, we have all these different parts. And I'm not saying that Rhys and I are solely defined by our fitness training, but by the average standard, we probably do more of that than most people do. Likewise, not as much, because we do have day jobs, as elite level athletes who are doing it full time. So there's always a scale to look at. And I think kind of going back to what I started off with is, understanding your values, understanding who you are, really trying to frame everything in the context of what your life goals are, what your performance and physical health goals are, and also what your interests and passions are as well, and trying to use those as a kind of measure against anything that you choose to do and how you choose to spend your time, and what sort of commitments you want to make to your training. So it's really, really key that you understand you and your life and your requirements and your responsibilities and your hopes and dreams and all that other woo-woo stuff, so deeply, or at the very least more than you currently do, because a lot of people very rarely would ever sit down and kind of write this stuff out. And this is where the sort of tactical practice is going to come in a little bit, where I would recommend to anyone listening to take some time, at least every 12 weeks, because our lives are in flux, we're in flux, things change, aspirations change, hopes change, goals change, life just changes. It's what happens, and it's changing every single day. So I think at least 3 or 4 times a year, really, you want to sit down and kind of reevaluate, who am I? What do I stand for? What are my values? What's important to me? What are my big whys around everything in my life? And then factor in the fitness training and everything else around that into that process. So it's within the context of your real human life. What are the demands on your time? Because it's all well and good saying, I want to train 5 or 6 hours a week in whatever discipline you're doing. But when you actually sit down, and I'm exceptionally OCD about this, I have my whole week segmented on a spreadsheet, so I can see exactly how many hours I have free to do certain things, because it's all well and good saying, I can fit that in and I'll squeeze it in, and sometimes you will, but a lot of the times it will kind of bounce back and hit you, because
I should do that, but I really don't.
You really should. It's a great practice.
I try, and what I tend to do is I have like a basic kind of, these things tend to happen on these days. Like gymnastics, I go Monday and Wednesday. So I that fits into my training perfectly, because I know that those 2 days I'll be doing training. So it's Wednesday today, I'm not going to be doing anything. I might just do a couple of little handstands or something when I'm about just in the day, but I'm not going to do anything heavy until the evening when I'm at gymnastics. Yeah. And so those on other days I can focus on other things, because I know when I'm at gymnastics I'll be doing skills stuff, I'll be doing mobility stuff, and I'll be doing more complex training, more advanced stuff. I'll be working on my levers and stuff like that, and I'll be doing a lot of like complex compound exercises on the rings and on the high bar and P-bars and stuff like that. So I'll save other days for other types of training, like a basic strength day I might do on a Thursday or a Saturday or something else. And I know I can fit those days into other places, because I'm definitely doing those 2 days of the week. So I can chuck them out the window. I don't need to be thinking about them all the time. I can get on with the other aspect of my training. Like I can do a HIIT day on Tuesday in the middle, for example, when I'm probably a bit achy, a bit of DONS, in it, delayed onset muscle soreness.
Yes.
All my bits are hurting, and I can just be like, I'm just going to run out all the bruising, or row it out, or whatever, and then have a nice sauna and a steam afterwards. And then it takes half hour.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's doing something for your body every single day. I think that's really what the essence of good health and fitness training is, whether it's just some low-level mobility drills, whether it's some, recuperation. I mean, I really like hitting the pool and going for a steam, just to kind of mobilise and stretch, and then kind of, heat up, then jump back in the pool. So you're doing hot and cold. So it really helps break down any sort of extreme inflammation and tissue damage. So that can really aid recovery. And, sometimes you have to go off plan. I might be, wanting to do a massive lift on a Wednesday, but I just might wake up and think, my God, I'm in so much pain, things aren't right, my back's not quite where it needs to be. And obviously certain parts of your body you can work around, other parts you just kind of have to accept that, most of the tension is going to be going through there no matter what I do. So your back being a perfect example of that. So therefore I'm going to back off today and I'm going to go and do some, just general TLC work. So a bit of foam roll, a bit of stretching, a bit of steam, sauna, whatever it may be, but you're still doing something.
Yeah, and just because you're having a stretch and you're hitting the sauna and steam, it's still relevant to your training. That isn't really, to me that's a rest day, but like that isn't actually a rest day. Even though you could say, yeah, I'm resting, you are, but it's an active part of your training still. It fits in perfectly into that little segment because your body is telling you. Being able to adapt your sessions to what your body is saying is very important, because if you're ignoring that, if you're like, oh, I'm just going to push through, and then like a couple of days later it's feeling a bit worse, but you're like, no, I'm just going to push through because I've got to do my strength set today, I've got to do my 1 rep max or whatever, like what are you thinking? You're in agony. That's a very, very easy way to injure yourself and to fuck it up long term. So
yeah, exactly. And also, to completely destroy your motivation as well, because we've all been there. Like, you get injured, it's massively demotivating and frustrating, and also you can get very angry with yourself as well, because you knew you shouldn't have actually gone and lifted. You knew you shouldn't have gone to the gym that day, and if you just left it another 24 hours, you probably would have been all right. But because you were pressing on an already very stressed muscle or joint or whatever it may be, you've done yourself some long-term damage and you've ruled yourself out. So again, from a mental perspective, that's exceptionally damaging.
Yeah, and it's not to say that you shouldn't push yourself because you should, and it's not to say you can't push yourself, because you should be trying to push your boundaries actively so that you're constantly developing, you're constantly hitting new peaks, because otherwise you're not going to be developing. So you need to be pushing yourself, but when it's you'll know if something's getting too much, and it's better just to ease off for one day, and then next time it comes around it won't be as bad because you'll have recovered to that point, so that you can push it a little bit further next time without feeling the same wear in your muscles and your joints and anything, the same kind of strain, so that you'll be able to peak it a little bit more next time to get to that level, and then peak it a bit more next time to get to that level. It's a constant progression. You're not just going to fly in and do massive stuff straight away. It just doesn't work like that. I mean, nothing works like that. So why would fitness, especially if you are doing like weight training, when you're loading a lot, but you're still doing it, and you're like, what are you thinking? Just get it right, ease off, and then hit it properly when you've recovered, so that you don't injure yourself, so that you don't risk it. It's not worth it. I mean, it's just not worth putting in that extra effort when you run that risk.
Yeah, exactly. And equally, just don't be the guy that says he goes to the gym 5 times a week, but when all you really do is go and sit in the steam room in the sauna. Because people can see that you're not someone that goes to the gym 5 times a week. There's only so much steaming and saunaing that's going to help you to look fit and well. But doing that sort of stuff, doing that low-level recovery work, it's going to feed back into the other stuff that you're doing, and it's going to complement it. So it doesn't always, as you've quite rightly said, it doesn't always have to be hard and intense. But equally, when it needs to be hard and intense, make sure it is very, very hard and intense.
Yeah, absolutely. And note with bodyweight stuff as well, that hard and intense stuff comes in the form of advanced strength exercises. You're looking at muscle up development, lots of pull-ups, lots of dips, lots of leg raises, and if you're not quite at that level, it's going to be your pulls, your rows, and your push-ups and your flutter kicks and stuff like that. But as you progress, you're going to start compounding it, like we talked in episode 2 with our low-level drills and the movement fundamentals. You're going to be bringing those in and working those to their max, different variations of them to keep progressing. It's so that's where they fit into your workout as well. When you're really pushing it, you're doing your absolute most. You're pushing the limits of your variations, advancing each time through those strength progressions. Then, when it comes to your fitness, like I recommended, because I am a bit biased, doing your HIIT training. Just use that as your not recovery, but use that as your muscle recovery time, and just push yourself in a movement capacity and endurance capacity when you're doing your HIIT training. That's why I don't do any loading when I do it, because like you were suggesting, doing kettlebell swings or something, I wouldn't do anything weighted then, because I know that my everything else is still trying to recover, even though I'm doing HIIT, and that is pushing yourself. It's a different, it's pushing yourself in a different capacity, your CV training rather than your muscle training specifically, you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. It's just all relevant to, what you're trying to work on at that time, what the sort of general discipline is you're doing, and obviously how your body feels in that moment as well. So, let's not say never do kettlebell swings as part of your HIIT-based work or your kind of Metcon stuff, but equally, don't do it if it doesn't feel like it's in keeping with the rest of the training you're doing, if it's not an essential, or equally if some part of your body, particularly like we said before, your lower back, your hips, shoulders even, obviously with kettlebell swings, there is a large total body demand. So, there's not many things that are hiding in that movement. So be aware that, even if you think, oh, well, I'm only swinging with my, it's a hip drive movement, I'm not really going to be putting too much stress through my biceps, for example. Well, actually, when you're kind of swinging heavy and hard and doing very high rep, high volume work, the biceps, even though they're kind of in that straight arm position, could be put under a lot of strain. You could potentially tear something if there's already damage there. So just be very aware of what's going on in your body. And one of the things I'd like to talk about in a future episode, we won't get into it today because it's a huge subject, is, well, more specifically to what we're talking about now, is full body listening. So being able to very consciously check in with your body every single day, and as a kind of part of that, just sort of meditation in its broadest sense, and how you can, through meditation, get much more attuned to what is going on in your body physically at any given time, what maybe feels like it needs a little bit of extra attention, what maybe feels like it needs a bit more of a rest, just being that much more aware rather than kind of feeling pain and not really understanding what that means, just having the capacity to kind of more specifically define exactly what is going on at any point in your body. But we'll get into that in another episode because it's a very large topic area.
Yeah. Check this out though, right? Monday, when I was doing my gymnastics, I went there for a strength session. So I was doing loads of reps, loads of just compound exercises, not like skill stuff or anything like that. I smashed my levers in the beginning, blah, blah, blah. Then once I wore myself out, I was like, I'm going to work on handstands for a bit, I'm going to work on my progressions with that, and then I'm going to go back to the strength stuff for finishers to end off the session, because it's an hour and a half, so I can't just work for an hour and a half solid. I need to split it up and have little different focuses within that session. So when I came to my handstands, I'd already worked my core and all my muscles to its max. So my skill in the handstand wasn't to its top, because I didn't have all that strength that I normally had. I didn't have all that energy and that muscle capacity that's usually sitting there waiting, because I'd already worn it all down. And after about 20 minutes of doing handstands on the parallettes, I've been doing negatives down to elbow levers and stuff like that. It wasn't just holding handstands, it was variations, movements and stuff like that. My core started cramping up, and you know from doing lots of handstands, Chris, sometimes this happens and it feels like you're oh mate, it just hurts so much because you can't avoid it either. There's only really there's a few stretches you can really do to open up your core. So I was doing the the top end of a Hindu, I can't remember what it's called, is it a cobra in yoga?
Oh, what, as you kind of arch up and lift the chest from the floor?
Yeah. So your arms are straight and you're starting a presser position, if you like, and then try and put your hips to the floor and then bring them into in line with your hands.
Yeah, it's a cobra.
Yeah. So, and it's really hard. You think, oh yeah, that'll stretch your core. Brilliant. Yeah, it does. But if you push or stretch too hard in either direction, it also kind of tightens up your core a bit. So I was doing that, and because I wasn't really getting anywhere with stretching, it was really difficult, and it kind of eased off a bit, and I thought, you know what, I'll do one more. I had the worst stomach cramp. Oh my god, it was
Was
so
it
bad. I got
one
up,
too many?
it was one too many. I got up. I risked it. I shouldn't have. I got up there. I was okay, and then it just hit me like after 2 or 3 seconds of holding. It just went, and like, mate, there's no way of avoiding it. I was doing my cobra. I like got out. I was like pushing my chest out and trying to like expand my chest and open up my diaphragm to try and pull my core apart a little bit, just to help counteract the extreme contraction. And I thought, more cobras, not working. I was doing like, I was like kneeling back on my hips to try and just relax my muscles in my core, and that wasn't working. I was getting up and walking around and moving, and there was nothing that was helping. I just had to grin and bear it, and like slowly work, just continuously, and to try and counteract it until eventually it kind of eased off. And I just had to like sit down for like a good 10 minutes, because it felt like, you know, when you've laughed for like, you know, when you go on hysterical laughing fits sometimes and like your stomach started cramping up, it's like that 10 times worse. So I had like, man, it was
Is it like that feeling like when you stretch in the morning and your calf just cramps up?
Oh yeah, yeah. You know, I used to, when I was a teenager, I used to get it in my hamstrings. I'd wake up and my leg was literally folding back behind me, and it's so hard to like, mate. Yeah. So it was like that, but in the middle, like with your leg, you instantly know which way you've got to move it to help counteract, to stretch out the muscle and ease off the cramping, like counteract it. With your core, it's a lot harder because there's so much there. There's so much going on. It's not as simple as just extending your arm or your leg. It was really funny. Like I was laughing about it, and but oh my god, it hurt so much.
It's amazing, isn't it, when you do something? I mean, I sort of said about that I think in the last episode when talking about doing deadlifts and handstands back to back.
Yeah.
You know, just like core was just destroyed by that. But actually the worst one I ever did was doing handstands. Always seems to be handstands, isn't it? But doing handstands with L-sit pull-ups. So for anyone listening, you know, I think we've mentioned it before, but, you know, just doing a pull-up with the legs out straight in front of you throughout the whole of the movement. So just basically doing them to failure and then doing handstand press-ups to failure and then back and forth. So the handstands were all supported because I was doing it, the focus was on the pressing. I wasn't going to be doing free handstand pressing in combination with the L-sit pull-ups for the reasons we've listed before. But I was just like a mess by the end of that. You know, I don't know how many sets I did. It must have been sort of 6 or 7 maybe to failure. And, you know, when I mean failure, by the end it was literally like 3 reps a piece.
Yeah, but that's still good though, man.
But I reckon for the next 3 days, it took so much effort just to kind of straighten up, because when we talk about core, it must have been very specifically my abdominals, you know, were just absolutely annihilated. You know, the amount of cobra stretching I had to do just to try and be able to actually straighten my spine up, because that flexion, that real sort of tension was pulling me down all the time. It was great because I felt like I'd had an awesome core and an ab-based workout, which wasn't actually the intention of the workout. The intention was to test other things, but it's interesting that you kind of get the actual result from something else entirely. But I can somewhat sympathise with your pain, because I do remember excruciatingly how that felt.
Yeah, it does hurt as well. It's like, it doesn't happen often when you're training, but especially with bodyweight stuff, like you don't tend to cramp up except for hanging core exercises with your quads. Yeah, which are pointing your toes, getting those legs nice and straight, so you run the risk of quad. And like a lot of the time when people go training, they don't stretch out their legs. I see it all the time. Like even when I go down the gym, like you see people just go to do bench press, and then half the time don't even stretch their arms, so their shoulders. You know what I mean? Yeah. So quads, always stretch out your legs when you go training, especially with bodyweight stuff. Even if you're not doing pistols or any other squatting or lunging that day, because you'll still find that you run the risk of cramping in your quads when you're doing leg raises, hanging leg raises, L-sits, stuff like that.
Yeah, definitely.
That's key.
Hip flexors as well. I mean, for a lot of people, if, you know, as tends to be the nature with a lot of work these days, if you're spending most of the time sitting down at a desk or on a train or, you know, in conference rooms and meetings and things like that, you know, if you're basically not upright for the majority of the day, what is likely to happen is hamstrings and hip flexors are going to get quite short by the nature of sitting down. So, you know, I think everyone kind of, the go-to when someone says stretch your legs, they will stretch their quads and calves, but they won't often think to stretch their hip flexors as well.
Yeah.
Hamstrings is an obvious one. Bend down, touch your toes. Do direct hamstring stretching, because I think people can feel the tension in the hamstrings more. The hip flexors are one that, because of the nature of the actual muscle itself, it's quite hypertoned. It's very strong, so it can take a lot of tension. And it's not something that we would automatically feel directly in the hip flexor. People that might manifest itself in the quad.
Yeah.
So you might feel tension in the thigh, but it's actually higher up. So doing sort of kneeling hip flexor stretches, anything that opens up that crease, between your pelvic bone and your thigh, is going to really, I think, give most people a hell of a lot of benefit and stop any sort of cramping or longer term injury as well, because it's an area that just naturally gets very short when you're just going about your everyday life, but also then when you're training as well.
And split training is good as well for it. Like, not necessarily learning to do the splits, like in either direction, forwards or sideways. But I think that, because that is in gymnastics, that'll make your straddles better, because it shortens your lever. If you can do like a box split, like a side split, if you can take your your legs right out quite comfortably, then your straddle work is basically done already.
Yeah, exactly. And to be honest, through doing martial arts, that's helped my hip flexor stretching and mobility around my hip generally, because of having to do the splits, because that's kind of an intrinsic part of the discipline, is being able to do the splits. A lot of people make the mistake that, well, if I can do the splits, I can kick really high. To kick high, you need power as well as flexibility.
Yeah.
So
and I find that I would be able to kick quite high, but I can't actually split.
Yeah, but that's what I mean. The power is more important. Now, if you have the power, that's great, but obviously that's going to be limiting as well. So then you need the flexibility to allow the power to move more freely in the direction that you want it to.
Yeah.
So again, it's getting ratios correct. But what I get from doing the splits is a massive amount of flexibility and mobility through my hip. Now, what you tend to find is really interesting. You can see some guys who can do the splits, side splits more specifically, so not box splits, so going sideways on rather than front on. You'll see guys who can do normal splits, so what that means is with the foot turned into the floor, so the back foot, the instep is actually pressed in. As soon as you ask them to then rotate the hips round, so essentially the top of the foot is flat into the floor, the knees flat into the floor, and the quad, the front of the thigh, is flat into the floor, so it becomes much more of a hip stretch. All of a sudden, they can't do that.
Yeah.
And that's really interesting.
I'd be better doing the hip mobility stuff that, in terms of my hip flexors are very strong, and with my legs together as a unit, like I can lift my legs right up quite comfortably. I've got a lot of mobility there, but individually, like separating the two is a lot less. Yeah. So it's the inverse of that. You know what I mean? Whereas, because I can't do splits, but I can with my legs. If I'm not moving them apart and they're together, then I can bend them to my heart's content. Yeah, exactly.
So anyway, I think that'll do us for today's talk about stuff that was not exactly what we intended to do.
we covered that in the first 5 minutes, so you did that all yourself.
Oh, okay, we did mindset, did we?
We did news. We did news of the world. We did weather. We did politics. We've pretty much covered everything today.
I think this is probably a bit of an example of how future episodes will probably go. They will have a bit of a focus, but then they'll also be a little bit more random as well. But with just going back very quickly to the mindset stuff, I do want to drill that point home as only we can do, in that, really...
Well, say it again.
say exactly the same again, yeah. Basically, actually, maybe you could just edit this so that you can put in exactly what we said earlier on, and no one will know that.
Yeah, well, I'll leave that bit in as well, so they know we've done it.
Very simply, all I would really like to leave people on is just, when it comes down to selecting the training that you're doing, when you're selecting anything that you're doing in life, ultimately it's, this is more than lifting, it's more than just fitness training. It's hopefully going to give you skills. And I've learned a lot about how to manage businesses and life and relationships through fitness training. The mindset, the practices, the goal setting, the progressive attitude to everything that you're doing rather than just standing still, always looking to move things forward. You know, a lot of that's come from lessons I've learned in the gym, you know, learned from my physical pursuits as much as anything else. And I do think, you know, this is where business coaching and life coaching, all those things sort of feed back into fitness training, is fundamentally always make sure you know who you are, what you stand for, where you're coming from, and why doing this particular discipline is important to you. You know, take regular intervals throughout the year to check in with that, because, as I say, you are constantly in flux. So just address that as much as you possibly can, because then you're going to get so much more from your training long term when you're doing something that has a meaning to it, has a real interest to you, and obviously ultimately is something that you get very passionate about as well.
Yeah. I think finding something that you can use as, like, whether it's a martial art, whether you're doing gymnastics, or you do pole fitness, which it's called for guys, but pole dancing basically. My mate does pole. He's absolutely amazing at it. He's actually fucking sick. Ben Weeks, his name is. Give him a little shout out on the podcast. That'd be happy. I'll link to his Instagram account because he does some mad shit.
Cool.
And
I'd love to do that, actually. That would be a lot of fun. Because I mean, how many times I probably not so much now, because I don't really go out to bars and clubs as much as I used to, but I remember, like, whenever we'd go out as a group of lads, because like a lot of the guys I'd hang out with, you know, they'd go to the gym and we'd all train together, and they were all pretty fit and able. None of them gymnasts, but everyone could kind of, at the very least, hold themselves up off the floor and do pull-ups and things like that. And you'd go into a club and you'd see like a stripper pole on the stage, you know, and you couldn't help yourself. Like, within 5 minutes, you're kind of doing a bit of pole dancing and mucking about. And it was actually always quite good fun, even when you were just doing it stupidly. I actually remember sort of being asked to leave a premises for doing too many pull-ups on the stripper pole. That was in there. So that's a little bit of an insight into my history, but it was good fun. So I'd actually quite like to do that in a more structured way. I'd say it was the most civilized way of being thrown out of a club altogether. I was up in Newcastle, and the bouncer was he came over at one point and said, "Could you guys stop doing that, please?" And no one else was on the stage. There were no other dancers around. We weren't in the way. They just didn't want us up on the stage. And
right, yeah, because it encouraged everyone else.
Exactly.
Yeah, he was like, "Damn, you got skills, boy." I don't know why he's a yank.
So we were just having fun, and then stupidly, I didn't intend to go back up on the pole. I wasn't like, I'm not going to listen to the bouncer. I was, I'm quite a respectful guy, so I thought, fair enough, we're having a good night. I don't want to get asked to leave the club. And then I saw some of my friends over at the bar, and they didn't know where they were clearly lost. They didn't know where we were. So I sort of jumped up about halfway up the pole. Like, I wasn't like climbing up it and hanging off it or anything. I literally jumped up just so they'd be able to see me above everyone else's heads, and was sort of waving. And obviously, as I've started waving, I've just looked down, and the bouncer that's just come over to tell me to stop climbing up the pole has just turned his head and just given me that look as if to say,
"You bastard,
out you go." So I was like, "Oh, really?" So I've come down, I've gone, "Look, I honestly wasn't being disrespectful to you. I know it might seem that." Anyway, I kind of explained myself and, what I was trying to do. And the more polite I got and the more courteous I got and apologetic, the more angry he got. Yeah. And it was reaching this kind of impasse point where one of my friends just sort of came over and said, "I think you'd better stop being so nice now, because this is
apologising. It's going to hit you."
This is only going to go on, mate. Because I think, in those situations when someone's being kicked out of a club, normally there's a bit of a fight, a scuffle, it gets quite physical, and I think it almost makes it maybe a bit easier on the bouncers to kind of have someone put up a bit of resistance.
Yeah, because then they can just do what they like and they win automatically.
But there's me standing there in front of all these people, hands up, kind of sort of going, "Really sorry," being very apologetic. And
I'm nodding along the whole time going, "Yeah, you're right. It's all my fault. I'm such a moof."
So then you've got like all these other bouncers over in the corner. You've got all my friends behind me. And luckily one of my friends who just had the good sense to say, "I think we'll just leave now. There's only one way this is going, and it's not going to be very pretty. So let's just, cut our losses and go." So we walked out again, with one more apology. But anyway, it was good fun. So the pole dancing aspect, kind of coming back onto the actual conversation.
Yeah, definitely.
Would actually be a lot of fun.
I think to add in as well, Chris, before we do disappear, is that sometimes you've got to pick a certain method of training so that you can hit the next method of training, and that's another advantage of doing these cycles. So when we were talking about, this seems like ages ago now because we've just been rambling for like the last 20 minutes.
Yeah, when we covered this last week.
When we were talking about this other thing called training, I mentioned doing cyclical training. You spoke about doing cycles and cyclical training, and often you need to do like a focus on one. You have to do a cycle of one focus, like strength, to be able to do a cycle of another focus, like skills. So understanding that sometimes you have to put in the slug for the long haul, and you just gotta grind and grind and grind so that you can hit the next stage. It's sometimes that in it will build that kind of discipline that will then translate into other aspects of your life, like your family, your general like health and well-being, your mindset, your ability to break stuff down and make better decisions based on that discipline you've achieved from going, I need to do a strength cycle now so that I can work on my lever next month, rather than going lever, and in the end you're not really getting anywhere, you know.
That was really good, actually. It was like, try saying that fast 10 times. Lever.
See, maybe I'd be pretty good at beatboxing. Do it all. You said you were messing around with it earlier, didn't you? With your new mic and headset combo.
Yes, I was. Yeah, I was having a bit of audio fun.
You should send us a little clip of that, and we can use it as the outro.
Or maybe we'll just do a little bit of a beatbox just to to kind of entertain people. Maybe that should be the outro music for the show.
Yeah, or just after the outro, just on the end, like a little PS on the back end.
Yes, yeah.
Like a little bonus track.
I'd love that. Let's try that.
Yeah.
So with the end of the show in mind.
Yeah. Let's do the end of the show. Chris, you know the words, mate. So you do the wrap up.
the wrap up. No, I'm not even going to try that. So guys, thank you very. Sorry. Thank you so very much for listening today, guys. Thank you for sticking with us through the ramblings. Hopefully you were able to pick out some little gems of wisdom and value out of all the garbled other nonsense that we got through. Obviously, that's part of the joy of this show, that you not only get some facts and some detail, but you also get a little bit of entertainment from us prattling on as well. But if you did like what you heard today, please do head on over to iTunes to leave a rating and review for the show to help other people find us, and also just for a bit of good karma for yourself as well. And we'd really be very, very grateful as well. If you want to reach out and ask us any questions directly, if you want to ask us a question you'd like answered on the show, to potentially come on the show to talk to us, just to give us any feedback in general, reach out via social media. You can find Rhys as More Than Lifting, and you can find myself as Coach Thatch on a variety of different platforms, or just head on over to morethanlifting.com where you can send us some more info or questions there. Anyway, I think that'll do us for today. Anything you want to add before we go, mate?
If you just want to get the stock out of this kind of this soup, then you just go over to the site and get the show notes. I'm going to break down everything. I might even just do bullet points for this episode because there's just so much stuff we talk about, and just list it out so that you can just get the key points out of it. Because this is a bit of a rambly one, I'll just sum it up nice and simply for you. Get over to the website. We'll have links to everything we talked about, including Ben Weeks' Instagram account, because he's awesome. And and that is about it, guys. Outro music.
Yeah, there you go. Anyway, that'll do for me for today. Rhys, all good?
Yeah, all good, mate. All good.
Superb. Well, thanks again for listening, guys, and we'll see you on the next one.
Oh yeah, next week we're talking about nutrition and stuff, so don't forget to bring your sandwiches, and I'll catch you then.
Bring your sandwiches.
Yeah.
That always reminds me of a there's a great there's lots of great videos on YouTube where it's basically football managers, generally back in the day, although I'm sure it still goes on, but old school like Division 1, Division 2, maybe in lower league managers basically tearing out their guys at half time or after a game and just sort of criticising them for a really bad performance, giving them like the hairdryer. And there's one, I can't remember the guy's name now. Maybe we should put this in the show notes as well, just for banter. But he's just absolutely annihilating his guys after the game and saying how bad they was. And one of the guys, he just says, "And you come meet me outside in the car park. Bring your girlfriend there too. And I tell you what, both of you, bring your lunch as well." And it's hilarious. It's so great. And whenever I hear someone say anything about bringing lunch or sandwiches, I always think back to that. So.
What's happened to this podcast?
I just thought it was just quite funny. It just tickled me.
And we'll put that in as well.
Definitely, I'll find the link and we'll put that up because it's just quite entertaining, especially if you like football and you know what it's like getting an absolute roasting from your manager at any point during the game. Anyway, that'll do.
Wait. We've got about 10 more minutes to hit the hour mark, so have you got any other filler? Any chocolate spread to go in the mix? No. I think for our sake and for everyone else's sake, we should call it a day then. Yeah, okay. All right. Catch you next week, mate.
Yeah, you too, mate.
Yeah, I'll see you then.
Cool. Bye.
Bye-bye.
I think that's definitely not the most waffly one we've done.